as the sun comes over, this is going to be clearer, but I'm just doing this to, we're sort of doing this backwards. I'm going to talk about this after the shelter stuff, just to give you a heads up, because we're going to give time. Ignore these sticks for now, and I'll explain why they're there from past courses. We've got a straight stick in the ground, or as straight as possible. Generally want a flat bit of ground, and what I'm going to do is we're going to use this for a navigation exercise we're going to do. For now, what I'm going to do is I plug this stick in the ground. What I'm going, not this one, I'm going to remove this one. These are from past courses. So what I've done, I've put a straight stick in the ground. It's here already. Trying to get a flat area that's in the sun. More difficult, and there's lots of trees around, but that might be what you've got. That stick casts a shadow. I'm going to mark that shadow with another stick. I'm going to mark that, and that's going to be our western marker. Westerly marker. Not exactly. I'll get another stick to put in there, more obvious than that. And we're going to come back later and see where that shadow's has moved to, and then we're going to start our navigation lesson from there. Generally speaking, I'll explain what that is. So I've marked the shadow, the end of that shadow with the stick, and when we come back I'll explain how that works, okay? So when you're walking around this area, please avoid this area.
So this package right here is basically my emergency shelter. So it can be shade, or it could be a reflective surface to take advantage of the fire's radiant heat if I need to reflect that heat back on myself convectively to warm myself up in cold weather. Or I can turn the blanket upside down and reflect the heat away from me for shade in warmer weather. The key element to this is that you have a reusable type blanket in this system. And so you want that thing in, and this is one of those do as I say, not as I do things, because this thing's obviously green and it should be orange, okay? If I'm going to use this, it's an emergency, right? So I want it to be seen. I don't want it to not be seen. It's going to be a lot easier to see if this thing's orange. And if it's orange, I can put 3 big black X's on the back of it, or three black lines with duct tape, and I've automatically got a signal panel. As soon as I set the shelter up, I've killed 2 birds with 1 stone. I have an aerial signal and I have a shelter at the same time, all quick and easy, okay? So that's the first element to that shelter. The next element is I always carry stakes, because I'm not carving sticks in an emergency. I'm not even going to look for sticks in an emergency. I want the stuff right there handy to me so that I can put it in the ground and be done with it. These are made out of titanium, so they're not adding hardly any weight to the system, and they're plenty strong. And then I have this Ridgeline. This Ridgeline is really the key to the whole thing. And this Ridgeline needs to be set up a certain way so that it's very quick for you to do things in an emergency if you need to. And so this is the key element to everything. And you can see I've got this hanked, and it's about 30 feet of cordage. And for you guys, that's about 10 meters, I guess, right? So, and the way it's set up is it already has toggles on it that can be used with the grommets on the tarp. It already has Prusik lines on it that can be used to tension the tarp. It already has a loop on it that can be used to go around the tree. So what I want to do with this system is I want to walk over to the tree that I'm going to use. We'll say it's this one for now. I don't stuck myself in the eye with something on the way. And we're just going to pick a stick up off the ground. We're going to take this and we're going to pull out some line. Because it's hanked, it's not a big pain in the ass. It's not going everywhere on me. I'm going to pull enough line out here to go around this tree very easily. And I'm going to pull a loop of line through this bowline knot on the end and jam a stick in there. And then I'm going to pull that tight on the tree. And that's going to create a marline spike that's going to stay tight under tension. But if I need to get it undone and leave very quickly, it's easy enough, no matter how much tension I put on it, to get it off of there. And the beauty of that is I could just wrap this around the tree, but then I've got to put all of this junk through this loop, and then I've got to pull all that junk back through the loop to get it undone. This way, there's nothing I have to pull through the loop except that loop of line that I put that stick in. And you could use a tent stake for this as well if you needed to. Then all I have to do with this is start walking. Nothing's on the ground, nothing's tangled up, nothing's a pain in my butt. I come around the tree and I drop it, okay? I'll get on this side of it for you guys, okay? What I do is I step off about an arm's length away from the tree. I turn a slip loop in the tree itself. I put the line through that loop one time. I come back underneath and put it through that line loop 2 times, just like that. And when I pull that tight, it's going to stay tight by itself because it's a friction knot. Then I'm just going to come back in here and put a 1/2 inch in here against that to lock that in place so it doesn't come undone, and my ridge line is complete. Now all I really have to do is adjust these 2 Prusik loops where I want them, depending on where I want my tarp. And that's the beauty of this, is I can put my tarp anywhere I want to. I could use this loop here as the beginning of my shelter and put a toggle through there, and then I only have to use one of these on the other end and adjust it, and then this one can be saved for hanging a lantern or a candlelight or something like that off of a headlamp underneath my shelter if I want to, or I could put it through a 3rd grommet if I had one in the middle of the tarp. Then all I have to do is take my tarp, I just left my tarp, take my tarp, and I want to spread that thing out so that the long side, because these are only 5 foot by 7 feet, so I want the long side here, right, and the short side here. In this environment, I would probably set it up to reflect sun away from me if I could. Pull these toggles through, and sometimes that's easier said than done, depending on where your knots are at. And if you set yourself up a little better than that, you'd be better off. But for me, I would just pull that thing out of there and pull that knot right out and pull it through. And you can just take this thing and put a stick in there and pull it tight, and that's fine, and just hang it there. But for me, it's better if you take this and double it over and put a lark set on there, because then toggle is a lot less likely to fall out of there once you do that, and it's going to hold better for you in the long run. We'll do the same thing over here. We'll just go ahead and pull this guy out just in case there's a knot in the way. Get him out of there. Come over here and put this thing through, just like that. Again, we could just put a toggle in there, but putting that lark set in there makes it a little bit more stable and secure. Just like that. Pull that tight. Pull that tight, and because you've got these Prusiks, you can tighten that up as tight as you want to get it, and it's not going to move this direction. Not going to come loose on you. But yet, if you need to adjust it, you can slide those Prusiks down the line and adjust it very easily. At that point, all I have to do is grab 2 of my stakes off my carabiner. Grab a stick off the ground, or I could use another stake, it doesn't matter. It's very easy just to take one stake through here, one loop through here, one loop through here, and use this stake as a toggle, just like that. I carry extra stakes on purpose just for those reasons. You do have sandy soil here, so I'd recommend sand stakes. They make those and they're not very expensive. You can buy a dozen sand stakes on Amazon for, I don't know, I'd say probably less than 20 bucks. Everybody, does anybody know what a sand stake looks like? Okay. Yeah, you can buy those sand stakes on Amazon pretty cheap. In this type of ground, I probably would prefer sand stakes over these shorter stakes. Where I live, the ground is really, really hard, and I can get away with just using these regular stakes. I do have a set of sand stakes, I just didn't bring them with me. All right, so I pull that toggle down. It's important with these stakes that you pull them at a 45-degree angle this direction and a 45-degree angle this direction, so that as you drive them in the ground, everything stays nice and tight. Okay, and then you can come back over here and adjust this one if it becomes loose. When you tighten that one up, you just come through here and adjust to make this thing nice and tight. Again, the soil's pretty soft here, but it'll work. And so now I've got a shelter that's going to reflect sun away from me, and I've got a shaded area that I've created, as long as I didn't put it facing the sun like I just did, right? Flip it to the other side and I've created shade. Obviously this is just for demo purpose. And then everything I've got is neat and tidy where I can get to it and get at it. And the same thing here with these toggles here. You wouldn't have to have these toggles on the line. You could use a stake. I've got 2 more stakes. I can put one in there and one in there and not have to have these toggles on here at all. Just have the Prusik lines on there and nothing else, and that would be fine. I've got this shade today. I've set my shelter up and I've got this shade today. And tonight, it's gonna be a little chilly. I don't really want to build a great big fire, but I want to be warm, so I need to trap some heat. Well, the first thing I'd probably do is I'd flip this dude over, right? Because now I'm trying to trap heat in here. And I can flip this over while it's on the line. Not a big deal. I'm just going to be camping over there instead of over here, right? I'm going to take one of these off completely, just like this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the rest of my stakes and I'm going to take this corner and pull it out at an angle this way, okay? I always start off with my ridge line about waist high. You can adjust that if you need to very easily. Now I've got this pretty low on the ridge right now. You would want that higher. You'd want to adjust that a little higher for this type of shelter, but you can always put something inside to lift it up as well if you need to. But what that's going to do is it's going to give you a plow point style shelter that you can sleep under to keep the wind and the rain off of you and be very low to the ground with a very low profile. And what that low profile does for you is when you build a debris shelter from natural material, the key element to that is to have that shelter ridge right at almost nose level so that you can barely get yourself into that thing, because the smaller that area is you're trying to heat up with your body heat, the warmer it's going to be. The more dead airspace you've got above your head where the heat can rise to, the colder it's going to be. So a shelter like this that's very low to the ground and low profile, you can slide your bag inside there and your mattress or whatever you've got. If you're sleeping on the ground, it could be your trash bag full of debris off the ground as your mattress. Slide in that thing and you're going to trap a lot of heat that way, and you can put a small fire right out here, and you've got 3 sides really that are trapping heat inside the convective surface of the space blanket. So you can convert it 2 ways right there. The other thing that you can do is if you have 2, you can do it with 1, but it's better with 2. If you have 1 space blanket, you actually can take this thing and we'll just pull this up real quick. Again, everything that we do, we kind of do it for a reason. And this toggling of this toggling with the stakes gives you, you're never pulling on this and destroying your blanket. You're always pulling up on the stake, just like that, which pulls the other stake out of the ground. And now I don't have to worry about ripping that blanket up or tearing it up. The thing with these space blankets is that you have to remember is that they're emergency equipment. They're only made to be used 1 time. They're not made to be used 100 times. When we do courses, sometimes these space blankets get tore up over time because you're setting them up 10, 15, 20 times. When in an emergency, you might set it up twice. So you have to think about that when you're thinking about this emergency equipment. That's exactly what it is. It's not something to be used every single day. Although we do that, we do use the stuff every day, normally when we're teaching. The other thing you can do with this system here is you can throw this thing over the top of the ridge line in the center this way, and again you'd probably have to drop the ridge line a little bit to do this right. In this case you want to drop it, in the other case you may want to raise it. That's the beauty of having this ridge line so easy to adjust, is that I can adjust up and down very easily if I need to. And then I'm going to stake out the 4 sides out here on both sides in the middle, and I'm going to have a tube tent or an A-frame. So you can, with the same ridge line, adjust it up and down, and that's easy enough. Take this thing and slide it down the tree like that, because there's enough stretch and paracord to do that. And I can slide this thing down the tree a little bit and get that thing close to the ground where I need it to get that in the middle and get it down on both sides and crawl inside of it like a tube. So with this simple ridgeline, this simple setup, you can actually make 3 shelters very easily. If you've got some cordage with you, we're going to talk about cordage management in just a minute, although I didn't bring it with me, but we can talk about it. If you had your cordage with you in your cordage management system, you could actually put guy lines on this, and you could actually fly this tarp from the center so you can get convective breeze underneath if it's hot outside. So you can flip this thing over, put the reflective side up, flip this thing over, put this thing in the middle, set it up as a fly. And fly means it's not touching the ground at any point. And you can get under there and you can take advantage of that convective breeze all night long if it were hot weather. And you could even put a mozzie net under there connected to the ridgeline if you were carrying a mozzie net as part of your shelter. Very, very easy to do with this. So this is a very versatile system. The only other thing with this system that makes it a little bit more versatile is by carrying a few hanks of cordage with you. We talked about that 6-foot hank of cordage in your pocket. If you had 4 more exactly like that in your shelter bag, you have 4 guy lines automatically that already have the knots in them, so all you got to do is put a toggle through them or a stake, pull them out and drive them in, and you've got a fly. The key to this whole thing is, I mean, putting the stakes in, putting the grommets in, all that stuff, that doesn't take any time at all. That stuff is really simple to do. What takes the time is setting up the ridge line and making sure that it's right. And if you, let's just do this here for a second. If you work with this ridge line enough, just pull it this way and it releases that loop, like that. Slide your Prusik out of the way, pull against that knot, that one comes out. Slide your Prusik up as you go, just like that. Pull this stick out, it comes off. Slide these all the way up to the front. Put that thing in your pinky. Is everybody familiar with hanking cordage? Anybody who's not familiar with hanking cordage? Okay, so I just started with the tag end between my pinky and my finger, and I'm just doing figure 8s here, just like this.
I'm never sure how to finish it.
Huh?
Hank it, but then what do you do at the end?
I'll show you. You leave yourself a couple wraps there, like that. You pull it off your hand, and you wrap from the loop up. So you go this direction, wrapping up the line just like this, toward the back end. You just keep it fairly tight. When you get to the very end, you just put a half hitch in there, just like that, and pull it tight. And then you have something that you can quickly get out here. And I mean, if you want to put, you know, if you want to put a timer on this, you could probably, I can probably set this up in way under a minute. This right here in way under a minute. That leaves me a whole nother minute just to put the shelter on there and stake it down in 2 places to get that emergency shelter up. That can easily be done. You know, we call it a 5-minute shelter. Most people can do it in less than 2 or right at 2 minutes. So it's a very, very simple system. The key element to that is to understand what you need to tie on these, what you need to put on here to make that happen. So you need 2 Prusik loops on there, and you need a bowline knot at one end. The reason I use a bowline knot, which is not necessary, you could just do an overhand knot on a bite in the end of that thing and it would work just fine. The difference is everything I do in the Pathfinder system, I try to build one thing onto the next. And bowline knots are the best knots to use for climbing and swiftwater rescue because they don't put strain on the rope like other knots do. So we teach that knot right off the bat as something you can use multifunctionally throughout the Pathfinder system. The same thing with the Prusik knots. The Prusik knots aren't necessarily a necessity on here. I could use a Climbhurst hitch, one going one way, one going the other way, and it would work exactly the same way. The difference is a Prusik knot is a better knot for swiftwater rescue or ascending rope in an emergency. So we teach the Prusik knot right off the bat. So they get that thing ingrained in their head and it can be used multifunctionally throughout the system, all the way through our Pathfinder system. And then the stop knot on the other end is really just to keep you from pulling that cord all the way through that trucker's hitch, and then you've got a knot, and then now you got to cut the line or dink around trying to get it undone for a half an hour. Whereas if you got that stop knot on, there's no way to pull it completely through. Is there anybody who doesn't understand that trucker's hitch that I just did? Everybody knows how to do that?
So map and compass, you need to have a handle on that first, and it's assumed that a lot of people know that. So I know there's people that haven't probably used map and compass, but that is number one. It's a vital skill, and it's not something that can be taught in a short period of time. You really need that. It's like an in-depth study. Some courses around the world don't include that on bushcraft course. They have whole separate courses. It just depends. And in the army, it's the first thing you learn, and you're taught it over and over again, map and compass. GPS is to back that up. So we're looking at natural means of finding north, and if we can find north, we can find south, east and west. And that's what we're going to have a look at here. We're going to do a little activity using a stick, how you can find direction. So what we did before, we put a stick in the ground, we've looked for a flat open area. It needs to be flat. If your stick's too high, the shadows are going to be cast too long, and in the end of the day you're going to find you've got a shadow a mile long to mark. So if it's not too short, and it's less accurate. So something about that is okay, definitely over a metre, but it's what you have. So what we did, we actually marked a shadow to begin with. And our first shadow mark, which is now in the shadow tree. Now I think someone said someone tripped over it. I'm hoping that they didn't trip over and put it back in the wrong place. So that would make this experiment inaccurate. So that's our first mark, our first marker. Now for argument's sake, regardless of the hemisphere you're in, your first mark is going to be your westerly marker. Doesn't matter what hemisphere you're in, this will work. And I say westerly, it's not your western marker because you won't know that until we have our east. And all we do after we've got our western mark, which is our first mark, we then find where this shadow tip is, which is here. And if you wiggle your finger, you can see it. Even on a cloudy day, you can wiggle your finger and you can see roughly, you can see where that shadow tip ends. And I'm now going to mark that with my second. My word, that ground's hard. Believe it or not, it looks like it's sand, but it's hard as a rock, just like our wood. And what that's given me is an east-west line right over a tree root, which is going to make putting a straight stick on that uneven. That's better. So that was our westerly marker. Don't confuse it with these sticks. I'll explain these later so everyone can see these two markers. Just forget these are even here for now. So that's given us a west and an east, and very basically what we do is put our west foot, our left foot on west, our right foot on east. So if that's east, that's west, that's east, that's got to be north, okay? And if we can prove that by getting, and this is where the straight sticks help. Now the longer you do this over a day, over a longer period of time, the more accurate this is, depending on what time of year it is. And I'm going to show that because we can go into quite a bit of detail about that, and I'll give you a little bit of detail. So there's our line, there's our west, there's our east-west line, and obviously at 90 degrees to that, I hope you all know north, east, south, west, how they appear on the compass. Now there are three kinds of north. Who knows what they are?
Magnetic north, true north.
Grid north.
Okay, who can tell me what the difference is?
One's where your compass points.
Yeah, one's where compass points, yeah.
One's where the grid lines run on the map,
Yep.
and the other one's
Which one is the third one?
Geographical.
grid.
There's
north.
natural north. We're talking about natural north. There's grid north, where your grid lines on a map, because that's a two-dimensional representation of what the Earth is. And we have magnetic north, where a compass points. And that moves easterly or westerly, depending on where you are in the world, at a certain amount each year. Roughly it's 2 degrees. It's easterly from where we are in Australia. And that's different to true north. It can be up to, on a compass in degrees, it can be up to 20 degrees difference. So the magnetic north, where the compass points, will be slightly to the east of true north. True north is what we're looking at now. Solar, celestial, they're what we call all natural methods. True north. I'm going to put this down on the ground so you can see that. I'm going to try and keep that straight edge straight as possible. If you come up and have a look at that.
You wait until the sun's going down, okay? And when that sun's going down, you look at that shadow and you drop a stick right toward where the sun's going down, and you leave it there. You put one stick here, one stick there. You get up the next morning and you look at the sun and you say, okay, well, the sun rose over here. So this is early in the morning, late, probably backwards. I'm freaking don't worry about that. So you get, this is called the last stick, first stick method. So you're taking the last line of the sun and you're laying a stick on the ground. And in the morning, you're taking the first line of the sun and you're laying a stick on the ground. And then you take one stick here and you lay it between these 2 points. And this perpendicular axis here is going to give you the north-south line. Well, north, south, north, north, south, whatever it is, wherever you're at, yeah. And this circumvents, this gives you that straight line all the time. Even if you've got the arc, you're still going to catch both ends of the arc, and it's going to give you that straight line. So this will give you a pretty accurate scenario almost all the time. It just requires you to be there at night and be there in the morning. But if you're camping anyway, or you've camped anyway, you're going to be there late in the day, and you're going to be there as soon as you wake up in the morning, and you don't have to worry about anything else after that. But for the sake of, you know, traveling during the day and you're already lost, you don't know where you're going, this method's not going to do you any good until you get camped that night, at which time you can make a shadow stick and kind of figure it out from there. And there's a couple other ways you can do things too to find a general direction. One of the methods that I teach is called the horizon line adjustment method. Okay, and so knowing that we're looking at the sun here is north, then we know that the sun came up over here and went down over here, which is why I was backwards there, because I'm used to looking at the sun being south, but that's okay. We know the sun's north, so we know that the sun came up in the east and it's going to set in the west. So if this is north, where'd the sun come up? Okay. So if the sun came up over here, it's going to go down over here. We can use our hands at one finger per hour, or one finger per 15 minutes. So this is 1 hour. And take a look at the sun and put it there and count hands down and say 1, 2, 3, 4 puts me dead on my horizon line. Okay. It's 11:30 now. 4 hours from now is going to be 3:30. Okay. At 3:30, the sun's going to be behind these trees or thereabouts. So but I know what time the sun sets, right? I know that the sun sets about 5:30 this time of year, right? So I can sit here and guess. I can say I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that 5th hour is going to be below the horizon. So I've got 5 hours basically until it's going to be fairly dark. And so what I'm going to do with that, and this works better in the zenith, and right now we're almost at noon, so it's not going to work as well. But during the zenith hours, it works really well. So where did the sun come up again? Over there, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to point my hand at the sun, and I'm going to put my shadow and make sure it's not here, but right here. So I'm pointing dead at the sun, and I'm going to put my feet together at 90 degrees here, okay? We know that the sun moves approximately 15 degrees every hour. That's how we get a 24-hour clock. If we know that the sun came up over there and it goes down over there, we can then adjust our feet the amount of degrees that the sun has moved throughout the day, okay? So if we take this and we say that the sun, we have about 5 hours left, so we're going to say it's around noon to 5, somewhere in that neighborhood. Daylight savings time changes all of that kind of stuff by an hour, but you're only going to be 15 degrees off. That's the case. So if we're saying right now that it's about noon and the sun came up at about 7, the sun's been up for 5 hours. 5 times 15 is what?
75.
Okay. So this would be 90 degrees, right? Are we right? 5 times 15?
Yeah,
Okay. We know that this is 90 degrees. We know that this is 45 degrees. About halfway between those two is going to be the 75-degree mark. So if I put my foot about right there and do this, then I should be facing north, because I've adjusted my horizon line. I've adjusted my line to where the sun rises and sets, so that I've got an east-west line here now that I would have started with in the morning. So I'm 10 degrees, I'm 20 degrees off in this direction. And that's about what that was, right? So, except it only took me 30 seconds to figure that out, instead of 20 or 30 minutes. It's not as accurate as that, but if you don't have sun, you don't have time to mess around, but you can see about where the sun's at. You know, you can not get a shadow on the ground, you can still see where the sun's at. That's how the Vikings navigated, by polarizing to see where the sun was at. And your eyes will polarize a little bit to where you can see, especially if you got sunglasses, or you can see where the sun's at even behind shadows. And you can use that method to get a generality of what direction you travel.